We're now about to get into the last part of the project, which will be about what you're going to do exactly once you're on the field. In order to get there, in order for me to give you those instructions, we're going to introduce the last big picture of the product, the last framework. And in order to get this framework straight into your head, we will need to refine a bit more what we mean by happiness and how it works. We've been introducing the concept of blue and red element, positive and negative element. And we talked about the fact that the more you have, and most of them are in your subliminal thoughts so you don't see them, the more you have of blue, of positive, and the less you have of red, of negative, the happier you are. But what is it exactly that we mean by this? We talked as well about moments of consciousness. What is it really? Let's dig a bit deeper. And so we're going to be able to merge your happiness with her happiness, with the happiness of other people, and have a big map which encompasses both of them. So then you can do what we will call harmonizing them together, so that you end up doing exactly what they want you to do, and they end up doing exactly what you want them to do. And all of this happens in a synergistic way. But to get there, we need to refine this model. Okay, let's see it this way. Imagine that from the moment you're born, you have like a database. You have a database inside your psyche, which is basically called memory. Okay? You have this database. And imagine that what you are for real is not going to be defined the way you used to see it, but is going to be defined as this database. Basically, you can see your own psychology the same way that you actually would see the space with the planets, with the atoms, with the molecules, with the biospheres, with the ecosystems, with the societies, etc. You could actually see your psychology like an entire universe, and we can make a lot of parallels between them. The goal of your subjective universe, your psychology, is actually only one thing. We can reduce it to only one drive. It is to expand this database as much as possible. It's to make it as infinite as possible. In the same way that we could see that in the objective universe, there is this kind of drive to complexify and go to deeper depth of structures, of combinations, of every single element that is present inside. In the same way, your memory, your database will start with one element actually. Exactly like all the formal mathematics are constructed, your psychology will only start with one element, which is the notion of set actually. Your entire psychology will begin everything with the notion of set. The only difference here is that the way that the sets get created is through consciousness. Consciousness is the set creating process. Imagine that your consciousness is the boundary of a set, and everything that appears in your consciousness is captured inside a set. That's how it works. And then this set gets thrown into the database. That is your memory. First of all, there is the first thing that you ever become conscious. The empty set. What it means, you don't become conscious of the empty set. You become conscious of actually nothing, of emptiness. That's the beginning of everything. And if you go to very deep levels of meditation, you can become conscious directly of nothing, of just emptiness. It's possible to go back there. And from here, there is the first element that gets thrown into this database, which is emptiness. You become conscious of nothing. There's nothing there. You become conscious. Your consciousness appears at first. So the notion of set itself appears, which is your consciousness. It creates set. But there's nothing to be conscious of yet. So what is the first element that gets thrown into the database? The empty set. The set which contains nothing. This experience of being conscious of nothing. And from there, you can become conscious of this element which is in your database, this is what's going to happen. The database is going to get constructed with new elements, and then they can be brought back to consciousness with new elements at the same time. What does it mean when this happens? It means that all those elements that get brought at the same time become a new set. So for example, there is this first one, this empty set, this experience of nothing. Now it's in the database. So now it can be brought back to consciousness. And at this moment, what's being brought back to consciousness is not nothing. It's not the experience of nothing. It's the set which contains nothing. This is it that gets brought to consciousness. And now this goes back to the memory. So the set which contain nothing goes to memories, and then it can get brought back. This is how numbers get constructed in mathematics. Actually, this is how it gets constructed as well in the psyche, in the subjective universe. So let's say that here is consciousness, and here is your database on the right. So at first there's just consciousness of nothing, which it goes here, it creates a first element in the database, the experience of nothing. Then this can be brought back. So now you're conscious of this experience of being conscious of nothing. And now this experience becomes a new point in the memory, and it becomes like an infinite gradation. This is how the first notion of infinite gets created. Now, the moment of after, either this can be brought back, either actually you can bring this one that just happened plus the previous one. You can do it, actually. You can bring them both. Now this experience of them both is encoded as one experience, which is this one here. So you have, again, new element in your consciousness that you can bring back the three of them. That's how numbers get constructed in mathematics. So your database gets bigger and bigger. So your psyche constructs first this notion of, it's like numbers, of infinite numbers, like in mathematics. From there, you get the notion of axis. From there, you get in a very formal way the notion of time, the notion of space. And from there, you get encoded in your psyche the perception of the outside senses and the inside senses. The outside sense, the inner sense. 5 outside, 5 inside, which are actually new elements. And then they themselves get complexified, etc. The goal of your psychology is just to make this database as complex as possible. It wants to have this to become exactly like a neuronal network. And it wants it to be as complex as possible. I've been reading a book from Ken Wilber. Yesterday, actually, I started it. And he talked about the notion of depth of any set, of any element, which is of how much lower level elements it's being constructed. And the span is how much of those elements which have this level of depth is there. Your psyche is exactly the same. It wants to have the biggest span possible of the highest depth possible elements inside. So it starts with low level elements like this, and then it combines them into new sets with your consciousness. Every time you bring something back from the database in your consciousness, then it goes back there in a more complex way, again and again. And if you bring multiple of them of different levels, then it creates even deeper elements with more depth. And it goes like this indefinitely. It just wants to get more and more. From there, when there is a lot of elements in the memory, we get to memory as actually a continuum. There is the complete memory, your database, your entire database, but you can't really access it. Something you can't access, if I ask you on this date, this day, this place, what have you been doing or whatever, or if you have to remember your school teachings, it might be complicated. So there is your huge database with everything inside, but there is as well how much of it can be brought back to consciousness to be used again. This will create your continuum of memory, how easy it is to bring it back to consciousness, which actually means in formal term, how easy it is to create new sets from what's already inside. So it will be like a continuum. It will be like a gauge, like this, hop, from 0 to 100% of how easy or how difficult it is to bring back to consciousness to create new sets. And then you also have a kind of extension of your memory, which is the outside world. The outside world is kind of an extension of your memory. From the standpoint of the psyche, that's exactly the same. It makes no difference. It's just an extension. In your continuum of memory, when you've just created a new set, it will be hard to bring it back a long time after. However, if you've just created in the time that comes right after, it's still there. You can still access if you don't wait too long. But if you want to create very complex new structure now on the spot, it's going to be complicated because by definition, the more complex it is, the more you have to wait before each iteration of bringing back what's been seen before. And here comes the outside world. That's what is very effective because you can outsource your memory there. It's not going to move. It's like a memory which always is accessible if you know how to get back to the same places. You write something in a book, then you can forget it however you want. When you go back to the book, you can still access it. It's exactly like a memory which has different rules. And so sometimes it's harder to access it. For example, you might need to take a ticket at the airport to go to the other side of the world. But if it's just a book at your house, it's extremely easy. So there is pros and cons. For example, playing an entire game of chess just in your head is complicated. So you can outsource it in the world on a real chessboard. So now it's easy. It's easier. You don't have to remember everything and you have more free space to create new levels of complexity in your psyche. And from here come cravings. What is a craving from your subjective experience? That's just this. It's your psyche perceiving a high level complexity possible of attaining. And in your experience, it's encoded as the thing that you desire. So for example, it's going to be thinking of going on a bad website or eating ice cream or whatever. But because it's hard to hold everything just in the mind, in the continuum of inside memory, your psyche wants to outsource it in the world, in the outside memory, so it's easier to interact with it, to create the new structure. Exactly like playing chess on a chessboard. So your psyche is going to want to outsource it, which means to bring this information in the outside senses. So it will want to actually have an ice cream in front of it. It's going to want to go on the website or whatever the thing is, whatever your craving is. So now you're going to tell me, but Alex, eating an ice cream, that's a very low level complexity. That's a very low level of complexity. Now, first it has been built in a very complex way, and then all of this is held in consciousness, so it goes back to the database as one element. So then you experience it as something not complex. But if you unchunk it back down to what it is, it's very complex. The notion itself of seeing or hearing is actually pretty complex. And so there is higher and higher level of complexity that gets created. And then when it gets thrown back into the database as one element, when it comes back, it seems simple. But no matter how simple it looks for you afterwards, your psyche is going to crave to keep using those high level depth elements that it's created, even if now it seems not complex. To the psyche, which sees everything in terms of the database, it is the way for more complexity. It is the way forward. So it's going to crave for it more and more, even if in your experience it's simple. There is a huge difference between what you perceive as complex and what is complex in terms of the construction which is inside, in terms of the database. For example, if you're a professional of piano, a piece of music that you're going to play, which seems extremely easy for you, there's no complexity in it. From an objective standpoint, it's actually very complex. So there's a difference between what's experienced in the consciousness, which is bringing back elements that's been created before, and actually the complexity of those elements that have just been chunked into one. There's a difference. And your psyche is going to crave to create more complexity, so it's going to crave to bring back those complex elements in consciousness, to mix them with new elements and create more depth of complexity, and hence come the craving. This level of complexity of an element in your psyche, we could as well call that the level of life of this element. It's a very good metaphorical way to perceive it. Is the level of life. Your psyche wants to create more and more life in this database, which means more quantity of high-level life elements, which means complex elements. And the complexity being exponential with how much of the previous elements are inside is going to want to use that again and again to create like a tower with more and more levels. So you have like an entire city in your psyche, in your database, in your memory. That's what it wants. It wants to extend its own ecosystem. Your psyche wants to do that. Actually, you are only a very high level life psychological elements, psychological set. That's what has been going on. At the beginning, you're not here. When you're a baby, there's no you. The baby is not experiencing himself as an entity. There's just this psychological database, and that's it, which expands. At some point, when the elements, when the set inside this ecosystem, inside this psychological ecosystem, gets more and more complex, it gets to elements that are going to be recurrent from one person to another. For example, the notions of time and space, which are very basics. From there, the notion of colors, of shape, of objects, which are just going to be chunking of elements which has come in the psyche with an associated number, which is not really a number, just a set, with an associated set, which place them in a kind of hierarchy. The first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, etc., which is experienced as time. What you experience as time is just this mathematico-psychological construction. Space is the same. Then from there we get shapes, colors, tones from the auditory channel, feeling, kinesthetic sensations. And there it gets more and more complex, and then we get to sets such as outcomes, goal. What is a goal? Why do we love goal? Because a goal is just a very complex set. That's why the psyche loves it. If you unfold what a goal is, it's like a map of all the steps, everything that needs to be done, and the goal. And it creates like a big set which is encoded in time. But if you look at time like in a paper, it just creates a very complex set. And then this set can be used as an element within a new higher level set, etc. Another complex set that gets created is the notion of individuals, which is just the same as objects. This pen is a structure in the same way than a human being in your psychology, just that the human being is more complex than this pen. But what we mean by individual is just this concept of object, shapes, colors, etc. So it has a shape, it has certain features, it's a set, right? This would be another different set. What happens when it comes to animals, human beings? It just sets as well from the psychology. But now, as the psyche wants to go more and more and more complex because it's its drive, it just wants the database to get more and more complex. Then it gets to this higher level, complex, recurrent sets from people to people. What is he going to do now? Now he has the notion of goal that he found out, the notion of objects, right? With the highest complexity objects being actually human beings. Now what he wants to do? Well, he wants to go further. So let's apply, for example, goals, outcomes to those high level objects. If you want to have outcome with a pen, well, having a notion of yourself might not be necessary. But if you want outcomes, if you want to create goals, this is high level structure, complex, high level life sets. If you want to get that in your database, having as elements inside the new notion of people, actually you need a notion of yourself to have it interact, to have it comprehended in the set, which is going to be this outcome. So then come the social life, the social sphere, societies, blah, 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 so on and so on. It's just more and more complex psychological structure, psychological sets. And there comes the notion of you. And then, what is happiness? What is actually happiness? Happiness is just the encoding in the kinesthetic channel of how efficient is being the unfolding of this entire complexity in this whole database. That's just this. The psyche has this drive to create more complexity, new sets, new complex sets, by bringing back previous sets or mixing them with new outside elements, which this we don't know where it comes from, bringing them into consciousness, and then it creates new sets, which can then be brought back again and again, and you got the idea now, you got the point. But how is it managing the optimization of all of that? Well, it's bringing multiple levels information into consciousness. In the auditory channel, there is the lower level complexity thinking, which we do with words. It brings words into consciousness in your auditory channel. This is your self-talk, which are low level complexity elements. It's still very high level complexity. Animals don't even have that. But for us as human beings, it's not that much. It's still low level complexity. At the same time, in order for those low level elements to know where to go in order to optimize the whole structure, because the point is not to optimize one little fragmented part of the database, it's to improve the entire database. So there is this low level evolutions, which is made mostly from the auditory channel with words, but to know where to go, there is higher level information about what's going into the entire ecosystem, into the entire database that gets brought into consciousness through the visual field. So you have pictures, kind of symbols, geometries of what's going on in the level of words. You have this geometry like this, I don't know, spheres, spirals. You can see different pictures of maybe landscape, I don't know. It's encoded in whatever way. You understand what it means when it comes. That's how you think. But then even that, what you get in the visual field, is not the entire map. It's like Russian dolls. There is words, visual, and then we need the picture of the entire system, what's going on, how efficient is it being. Here comes how you feel. Not all feelings are about this, alright? But some of them are about this. The kinesthetic channel is going to give you the global information of what's going on at the entire scale, the entire database. How is it expanded? Now, what is high-level happiness? What is low-level happiness? What is medium-level happiness? Just about how efficiently it's expanding. When you're suffering, it's just that the expansion of this primary drive of the psychology has got stuck. It's not expanding anymore. Information you get, suffering, this feeling. High-level happiness, it's just that everything is expanding perfectly. Now you might say, well, sometimes I'm extremely happy, but it's not expanding. I'm very chill, nothing is happening in my mind. It's what we do with meditation. What's going on with meditation is that actually by stopping to think what's happening is that the unconscious is free to process what it already has to process, and that it doesn't have time to process in normal time because we keep thinking and adding new stuff. It has time to process it. And because it has time to process it, now it's being very efficient. And so even if you don't know that it's processing it, you actually know it. You have this good feeling and you're like, but in my visual and auditory channel, there is no thought. Yeah, you have thought in your kinesthetic channel. This good feeling. What it means is just that at the lower consciousness level, everything is getting processed. Everything is getting processed, so the database is getting really well handled. This is what's going on with very deep levels of meditation. You get to levels of meditation that are so deep that you have nothing anymore in your visual channel. Almost nothing left. Same for auditory. But in your kinesthetic channel, you're getting waves of deep happiness. It just means that everything is going processed perfectly. But why this need for suffering? Why this need? Why? Why actually? Why? Why couldn't this ecosystem, this psychological structure, just find a way to just optimize the evolution without having this notion of yourself getting into suffering, into this trouble? Actually, it's not necessary. This is absolutely not necessary. This is just the process of evolution, of natural selection. We've come to a level of development which is actually not optimized. Nothing is really optimized out there in the nature, as long as you don't see it from very high level spiritual perspective, like, yeah, the world is, everything is perfect as it is. If you don't go that far, if you just look at just things in a normal, usual way, we tend to optimize stuff, but it's not really the case. This is natural evolution. We tend to get better, but it's never really optimized, it's never really perfect. In this sense, the psychological structure has followed the best way to optimize its own complexity, to optimize its primary drive, but it made mistake. It's like a computer, it's like an artificial intelligence. If it's not getting monitored by a higher level intelligence, well, it will make sub-optimized choice. But what is the higher level intelligence for us? Is it God? Is it? I don't know, but I've never seen it. I've never had God come into me and say, well, son, you've sub-optimized this. Maybe he did, I don't know. Let's not go into metaphysical and to esoteric concepts. Well, you are the highest level intelligence. If you make a mistake, there's no one to come and say, hey bro, I just noticed you make a mistake in your psychological development. Your teacher will do it, other humans might do it. But if the human species itself at the higher scale make a mistake, everybody make the same mistake, who's going to come above the human species and say, hey little human beings, you've made a mistake in your development? Well, actually, some people have gone there. This is what, believe it or not, this is what we call enlightened people, awakened people who have transcended the self, who has gone to the next level of psychological evolution. It's about realizing through deep meditation and internal work, kind of everything I've just explained, but in a direct way. Like, whoa, I don't even have any reality of itself. It's just a construct of the psyche. And it gets very liberating, because then you can liberate yourself from what we will call polarized sets. And this is the bitch. This is what creates all the problem. Polarized sets. When the psychology wants to go further into the complexity of the entire structure, it can't go higher on the complexity of the entire structure. It can if it goes into the more highest level of meta improvement. It will be like meta thinking, the very high level meta thinking. It can, but this itself is going to be limited, because the meta is actually not improving directly what's going on at the more micro levels. It has to go to micro, then to macro, then to left, then to right. It has to explore everywhere, then to zoom out, then to connect them, and to create a network of everything together. It has to come to every single point, the smallest, and link it to the biggest, and to the medium, and to the left, and to the right. It has to do it to get very real complexity, infinite complexity out of it, which is what it wants. So it has by default to focus on parts of the ecosystem, to put more emphasis on creating higher level sets which are made out of one part of the system and not out of other parts of the system, and then go back to those other parts. It's like one by one. Actually, what it does is that it monitors multiple parts at the same time. We experience being conscious of just one thing at a time, but it's just an illusion. It's just an illusion. The entire ecosystem is being conscious of every little fucking part at the same time. Not every, but it pings every part of the ecosystem. This is how you can get the feeling, the information about what's going on everywhere. It's because it's pinging a bit everywhere, like electricity a bit everywhere, right? And then at all those levels, it chunks the information into sets. So it's consciousness. It gets conscious in 1 microsecond of one place in the database. So it creates a set from it. And this set that has been created, it will be made into an element of a higher set of another part of the database. So it will create a higher set. And this as well will be made into a higher set from another part. And all of those are going to be blank. And then it go back to level 1 from another side while keeping this. And it creates the same. It creates like sand castles and bring them back, okay? And what you experience as your common experience of consciousness is just the highest level of all those sand castles, up, and boom, it brings them all back together into a big set, and then it comes back to low level, up, boom, high level, up, boom, high level. And you are just experiencing the tip of the iceberg, boom, 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 boom. That's what's going on. And why is it? Well, because we've trained ourselves to do that. Now, what is a polarized set? A polarized set is just one set that will not get out of consciousness. It's a set which will keep being in consciousness after and after. It will be part of every set. It's important. Why? Let's say the ecosystem wants to create more complexity. So it says, for example, an outcome. Okay, I'm a little boy. Let's set the outcome to succeed to manifest in the outside channels, the psychological construction of walking. Let's create this in the database. Well, every single new set that are going to be generated on the way has to be linked to this first set. It has to not go into an independent development. It has to stay within this development until it's done, and then it goes somewhere else. So until the goal is attained, it is polarized. It will come again and again. It will stay there. It's polarized. Now, think about it. What if at some point you had the amazing idea to tell yourself, hey, you know what? This feeling of having the entire ecosystem going well, what if I make it a goal? What happens then? Then happiness is polarized. And then you can't get out of happiness in the sense that the ecosystem will not let it happen to get out of happiness. It will keep wanting happiness to be there, which is kind of a meta drive. It's just an extension of its primary drive, which is smart in terms of creating complexity. That's a smart way to create more complexity. But what wasn't predicted was all the problems that will come from it. Because you can't allow yourself to get out of happiness, which means getting into suffering, you lose a lot of flexibility. And as well, it's never going to be completely fulfilled. This goal, it's an ongoing goal because the database wants to expand infinitely. So it's never going to end. There's no end. So it's a completely fucked up outcome, but we've all made that mistake. Very high level complexity outcome. Social recognition. That's an amazing outcome in terms of complexity. It's very smart to have come with this outcome. But once again, we didn't see coming all the problems that come with it. The ego. This is the ego. This is just this goal being polarized and not going away. So the ecosystem will not allow this goal to get out. It will not allow you to get out of this. And thus, the creation of boundaries, polarized boundaries. Look at it this way. It's as if here there is your consciousness and you have your polarized thought here, which is, for example, this concept of having social recognition. And then everything that will come in consciousness, So it's a new set. This consciousness is the creation of a new set which will go there. Everything that comes here will have to be linked to the structure which is inside, which is the entire encoding of what it means to have the social recognition. And so if you have elements that come here in this set, in this consciousness, which are not within the boundaries of getting social recognition, of getting to that goal, what's happening? The ecosystem sees it as not optimized. It doesn't want to optimize. So okay, it will go there, but still that's not optimized. It would be way more optimized to have an element which still is within this boundary of this goal, this polarized boundary. And there comes the notion of conflicts between multiple boundaries, because then you will be holding multiple outcomes in your mind at once. You will have multiple, okay, social recognition, but at the same time, for example, getting better with women. What happens? You approach a woman, she rejects you. What happens to the social recognition? What happens? It's not optimized. This outcome, it creates a new set, which means something happened in consciousness which is going to be sent into database as a new set, which is not optimized, in the sense that it's not within the boundaries of the actual polarized element, which is social recognition. But at the same time, if you don't do it, if you don't approach, you're at the same time not optimizing the outcome of getting better with women. So in either case, you're not optimizing. The problem is that we've gone so complex, this ecosystem, this psychological ecosystem has become so fucking complex that now, no matter what we do, there is conflict. No matter what we do, the elements that will come into consciousness will be outside of at least one polarized boundary of an outcome or of whatever. And the more it goes, the more it is. So now what's going on? At the level of the entire system, things are getting very fucked up sometimes, very unoptimized. So what information are you getting at the level of feeling? Well, suffering, which just means the information of what's going on at the global scale. But because even this has been polarized into a goal, well, there's actually no one suffering, just a psychological encoding, which purpose is just to increase the complexity of the entire psychological database. The entire psychological ecosystem is experiencing it as you suffering, which actually doesn't mean much. It's just a self-inflicted phenomenon. We just had as a prior goal to optimize the development of the complexity of this psychological ecosystem. But well, nature have made mistakes. Like every time, this is natural selection. Trial. Nature tries as efficiently as possible to improve the universe complexity. This is your subjective psychological complexity. The universe, the nature wants to improve its complexity. So it tries in the same way that you try, okay, I will set goals, I will set the idea of myself, I will set the idea of social recognition, blah, 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 so on and so on, right? The objective universe kind of does the same. It tries to combine things in this way, in this way, in this way. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It will die. If it works, it will survive. That's how it is. There's nothing bad in it. It's cool. It's actually a pretty cool game. That's what you've been doing all your life as well. Nothing wrong with that. It's pretty cool. But mistakes are done. And there's natural selection, which means that the mistake get erased. But fortunately, we don't need that. We just need to reprogram ourselves. Well, we're not going to go that far in this product, which is about dating. However, we're going to apply that in order to know exactly what to do on the field. Actually, we're going to express the entire game of dating as just this: harmonizing the boundaries of happiness of both you and of her. Not only harmonizing your inner boundaries of happiness, not only harmonizing her, but also harmonizing the interaction between them, harmonizing the inter-boundaries of happiness between both of you. That's going to be the goal. Well, how are we going to harmonize her boundaries to generate happiness for her? We've seen it during this entire project. That's what it's been about, how to harmonize her boundaries. You can harmonize your own boundaries or those of others through the outside channels, through the sensory world, which is a memory bank, but it is a shared memory bank. It is like a shared bank account. By influencing this, you can influence your inner world and their inner world as well through the concept of, for example, flow, as we've seen, psychological flow, this idea of threat. The database ecosystem has been programmed to react to that in a way that, for some reason, harmonizes the system. It puts them into a configuration which actually is very good in order to harmonize it. You can do that for yourself. For example, the Happiness Hub, that's what it was about. It was about using those triggers to harmonize yourself and as well to harmonize the woman that you approach. And so that's going to be the topic of the next video, how to harmonize your boundaries of happiness inside yourself. We're going to talk about meditation actually, but we're going to talk about it in a way that is going to be applicable on the field when you're going to talk to people, how to harmonize your own boundaries. At the same time, we're going to talk after that about how to merge it with boundaries of others so that you get a synergistic harmonization of all of those. Alright, I hope you enjoyed and, well, just see you on the next video.